traded a good Bible-believing, Bible-preaching church in their life, the blessing that is, for a 50-cent raise to move somewhere else. That's a costly raise. 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 1, it came to pass when the Lord would take up Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind, and that Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. Now, this morning we looked at 2 Kings 4, just a little bit ahead of this. We are backing up in the story. Elisha, please get this, is nobody where we're at. Listen now, the man of God, Elisha, of 2 Kings 4, isn't the man of God, Elisha, here in 2 Kings 2. Who he is here is the minister to Elijah. That's who he is. He poured water on the hands of Elijah. He was just the faithful servant of Elijah. That's who he is. And Elisha, in 2 Kings 2, here, just knows this: God is with that man. Elijah is my thing. And watch his heart from this morning. Watch this thing play out in his life. Verse 2, Elijah said unto Elisha, tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord has sent me to Bethel. And Elisha said unto him, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. So they went down to Bethel. And the sons of the prophets that were at Bethel came forth to Elisha and said unto him, knowest thou that the Lord will take away thy master from thy head today? He said, yea, I know it. Hold ye your peace. Elijah said unto him, Elisha, tarry here, I pray thee. The Lord has sent me to Jericho. And he said, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. So they came to Jericho, and the sons of the prophets that were at Jericho came to Elisha and said unto him, knowest thou that the Lord will take away thy master from thy head today? He answered, yea, I know it. Hold ye your peace. Elijah said unto him, tarry, I pray thee here. The Lord hath sent me to Jordan. He said, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. And they two went on. 50 men of the sons of the prophets went and stood to view afar off, and they too stood by Jordan. Elijah took his mantle and wrapped it together, smote the waters, and they were divided hither and thither, so that they too went over on dry ground. Now, as up to this point, you understand that there was a whole host, 50 men, that were the sons of the prophets that watched this miracle, but didn't get to walk in it. What do you mean? They watched the Jordan River part, but they only two walked on dry ground. How many of you think it'd be pretty cool to get to walk in the middle of a river on dry ground when the Lord parted it? That'd be pretty neat, wouldn't it? Okay, please get this. 50 men missed out on that. Only two experienced it. Elijah and Elisha. Why did Elisha get to experience it? Because he didn't stay at Jericho. Because he didn't stay at Bethel. Because he didn't stay at Gilgal. You say, what did he do? He just simply said, I am going all the way with this one. This is who God is with, and I'm staying with him. And it came to pass when they were gone over, verse 9, that Elijah said unto Elisha, ask what I shall do for thee. Realize he didn't ask that in Jordan? He didn't ask that in Bethel. He didn't ask that in Gilgal. Elisha said, I pray thee, let a double portion of thy spirit be upon me. He said, thou hast asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if thou see me when I'm taken from thee, it shall be so unto thee, but if not, it shall not be so. It came to pass as they still went on and talked that, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire. By the way, there's your closeness and your, as long as we were conversant. What do you mean? They talked. I hope you see this thing being a pattern. He got to see some things, experience some things that others missed out on. And Well, his mantle fell, you know the rest. Verse 13, he took up also the mantle of Elijah that fell from him, went back, stood by the bank of Jordan. And then he gets to cry out in this famous thing, where is the Lord God of Elijah? And when he had also smitten the waters, they parted hither and thither, and Elisha went over. Verse 14, and when the sons of the prophets, which were to view at Jericho, saw him, they said, the spirit of Elijah doth rest on Elisha. They came to meet him and bowed themselves to the ground before him. Can I tell you that Elisha here receives a blessing? Elisha here receives a blessing in his life because he simply stayed with that which was of God. He received a blessing. In the next chapters, you read about Elisha. Even by the end of this chapter, you read that Elisha then in turn becomes a blessing. So here was a man who wanted a blessing and just decided, I'm going to stay close to this one. Elijah's the one who's calling down fire from heaven. You understand that's not Elisha in 1 Kings 18. It's Elijah that God's using to preach to the Ahabs of the world. It's Elijah that prayed and it didn't rain for 3.5 years, and then prayed again and it started to rain. That's Elijah. And Elisha sees him and just decides, hey, when he threw his mantle on him, they're plowing the field. He said, you know what? It doesn't matter what it costs. It doesn't matter that I'm forsaking all. I will do whatever it takes to be near that one who passed by my way. I'm staying with him. Think of the Syrophoenician woman who's told no repeatedly, but receives a blessing of her daughter being raised again. Think of, you can come back to Genesis, but in Genesis 32, I'll tell you what, let's just go to Genesis 30. But in Genesis 32, you have Jacob. This is Genesis 30 is where you're turning. In Genesis 32, you have Jacob wrestling with the angel of God. And you remember what he said? Here's what he said. I will not let thee go except thou bless me. Do you understand? There needs to be something in us. There needs to be something in us that says, hey, I don't care what it costs. And do you understand it cost Jacob a limp the rest of his life? Before, he's still holding on after that angel touched his thigh and put it out of joint. He didn't let go because it hurt. He said, it doesn't matter. I'm not going anywhere until I receive a blessing. Now, Genesis 30. I want to shift just a little bit from the thought this morning to the second half of this, and that is Genesis 30. Look with me, if you would, please, at verse 27. And Laban said unto him, that's Jacob, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thine eyes, tarry. You know what he's wanting Jacob to do? Stay close. Tarry. Why? For I have learned by experience that the Lord hath blessed me for thy sake. Do you understand that Laban's life is blessed not because of Laban here, but because Jacob is close? Because Jacob's involved. There are a lot of lost husbands who are blessed because of a saved wife. In fact, that's literally what Paul teaches in 1 Corinthians. And so here's the thought. Tonight, the thought shifts just a little bit. The thought shifts from having the mentality, and would to God we had it. I mean, you need to have a hunger for the blessing of God that simply says, the things of God, that which God is in, I'm going to hold to and draw nigh to because I need a blessing. To shift to then this thought. who is blessed because of you? So we have Elisha. Elisha's with Elijah. Why? I want a blessing. I'm not letting you go. I'm going all the way with you. Why? Because I need what you have. So how do you know that? Because that's what he asked for. Well, what do you want? I want what you have. I need a double portion of your spirit. And Elijah heard that and said, ooh, you've asked a hard thing. You know why? Because Elijah knew what it cost him to get it. Elijah knew what he'd gone through. And listen, there's some of the, you sure about that? I would encourage you, when you're looking at God's blessing in other people's lives, not to want their blessing, not to want what they have, but to want what God has for you. Because a lot of times we want the blessing that God has given to someone else without paying the cost that they paid. You look at a church that's, running thousands and you go, oh, I want that. No, you don't. Go look at those men who've built those churches and see the cost that they've paid. And you go, well, I wouldn't want all that. Well, what do you think God was doing? You look at Jacob walking in. What do you mean? He halted on that the rest of his life. And you go, I'm okay. I'm good. Oh yeah, but we say we want God's blessing. And sometimes it doesn't come right away just to see if you'll hold on. Syrophoenician woman didn't come the first ask, didn't come the second ask, was the third. And listen, sometimes the blessing, like was sung about tonight, is the thorn in the flesh, Paul. That's my blessing in your life. No, I'm asking you to take it away, and I'm telling you, you need this. This is good for you. This is a blessing. Well, that hurts. Yeah, it does. You really want a blessing? Or as soon as somebody hurts your feelings, are you gone? I'm amazed, Brother Don, over the years, how many of the people who go, man, God's really blessing here. I love this church. It's almost like, oh no. Why? You can almost start the clock. Why? It won't be long now. They won't be here. It's unbelievable. Because this thing gets tested. But look at verse 30. Here's Jacob now. Verse 28, and he said, that's Jacob, appoint me my wages, I'll give it. He said unto him, thou knowest how I have served thee, and how thy cattle was with me, for it was little, which thou hadst before I came, and it is now increased into a multitude, and the Lord hath blessed thee since my coming, and now when shall I provide for mine own house also? So do you understand? I want you to get this. Laban's life is better because of Jacob. You have a widow woman in a Shunammite woman in 2 Kings 4 whose life is better because of Elisha that we looked at this morning. Whose life is bettered because of you? I'm saying it this way. Yes, we all need, and we all start out where you need to attach yourself to that which God is in and get close and receive a blessing. But at some point, you need to grow into the one that God is able to bless. You need to get near what God is blessing. You need to get in on it. But at some point, you need to grow into the one that God is blessing so that other people's lives can be blessed. There are a lot of people who sit on the pews for a lot of years at really good churches, and all they do is get a blessing. And listen, when you've been in the same church for 20 years, getting a blessing, but not giving anything, what are you doing? Or hungry hippo of the blessing of God. I want it, I want it, I want it, I want it. I want to get all the blessing. And it's like, where is it for you? When we moved here, one of the first lessons we learned starting a church, one of the first lessons I ever learned, I went to a church that had hundreds of people in it, that you could go to church when you weren't right with God and get in on a blessing because somebody else was right with God. Because somebody else had prayed for the services, because somebody else had poured into, and you could get in on a blessing. God could speak to your heart, and the Spirit was there, and it was moving, and God used it, and you can get in on a blessing even when you did nothing for it. Come on, how many of us, if we're honest, have been guilty of that very thing? What do you mean? We didn't do anything towards praying even that week that God would use the services. We did nothing. We just came to church, and then it was a blessing in our life, and we're grateful, and we're like, thank God. Okay, when you start a church and it's only you, there's nobody else that prays when you don't. When you and your wife are at odds, God says, I'll see y'all next week. It ain't the same thing. I'm telling you it ain't. And you realize real quickly, listen, if I don't pray, nobody prays. Why? Because there's nobody else. And then you begin to ask. You have to ask yourself, does this town need a place where God's blessing is upon some? Yes, they do. He didn't bring our church, where we came from, here. He called us here. Do you know what that means? We have to go from getting a blessing to learning how to be a blessing. That's not always easy. There are a lot of hurting experiences involved in that. Painful things. Like sometimes they're physical. My wife sent me a picture of me from 9 years ago today, coming out of surgery. 9 years ago today. Sometimes they hurt a lot. Sometimes it's emotional. It doesn't go according to plan. The question is this: are you living a life that others get blessed because you're in it? Here's what Laban said. Listen to me. If there was one trickster who kept on getting the better of Jacob, it's Laban. Jacob, yep, you might be a mighty good trickster, but you ain't got nothing on old Uncle Laban, okay? Like, look, you're the next generation now. We've been doing this since before you were born. I mean, what did it say? He changed his wages these 10 times? 10 different times he's trying to take advantage. But you know what he knew? This is Laban now, the trickster. Here's what he said. Hey, don't leave. I might be taking advantage of you every step of the way, but don't leave. Why? Because I know this. God is blessing my life because you're here. So who at your work can say that? I'm going to quit. You can't quit. Why? Our business has never been better since you became an employee. You say, nobody's ever said that. Kind of the point of the message. It's supposed to be said. You say, really? Yeah, let me show them to you. I'll try to not get too caught up in each one. You ready? Come with me to Genesis 39. Here's Laban with Jacob. Now we're in Genesis 39. Verse 1, Joseph was brought down to Egypt. That sounds real nice, doesn't it? Joseph was brought down to Egypt. That kind of sounds like, he was escorted, like, hey, come this way. Can we get you a drink? Would you like a Coke and peanuts along the flight? No, that's not what it was at all. What that is Joseph was enslaved and chained and brought to Egypt as a slave. So he's brought down to Egypt. Now, I just want to put that into some perspective to you, because you say, well, I can't be a blessing if things aren't going well. Really? So notice what happens with Joseph. And he's brought to Potiphar, who is a captain of the guard, an Egyptian. He bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And the Lord was with Joseph. You know what made this? It was the two words this morning were of God. You know what it is? It's with him. The Lord was with Joseph. You know what made the thing about Jacob special? God was with him. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man. He was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer over his house. And all that he had he put into his hand. And it came to pass from the time that he had made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house. Notice these next three words: for Joseph's sake. Did God bless Potiphar's house? Yes or no? Did God bless Potiphar's house because of Potiphar? Did God bless Potiphar's house because of Potiphar's wife? Definitely not. But God blessed Potiphar's house? Sure did. Why? Because of his slave? His slave? Yep. How could God bless a house because of a slave? Because God was with him. You want to know how you're going to bless your place of business? Aren't you glad you're not a slave? I feel like it. Oh, get over yourself. How's God going to bless my place of business? I'm not the boss. Why do I even want God to bless it? I don't want God to bless them. You realize if God doesn't bless them, you lose your job? Oh, that'd be a good thing. Come see me in a year of homelessness and let's talk. Like, we don't even think about it. God will bless your business when you're there if God is with you. If the Lord is with you. So what does that mean? It means you can't do things that would cause God to not be with you. Potiphar's wife. Look at verse 21. The Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. Verse 22, and the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison. I like this. Here's a prisoner in charge of prisoners. That sounds like a prison guard who doesn't want to do his job. I'm just saying. Okay, no, get this. We read the Bible, but we don't read the Bible. You ever had a manager who didn't want to do his job, so he made you do it? And weren't you just thrilled with that? No, you weren't. Okay, Joseph's in that situation, people. Hey, you're doing a good job doing my job. I'm going to let you do it and get all the blessing from up top. keeper of the prison committed Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison, and whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. And I'm sure when the prison bosses came in, when Pharaoh came down to check on it, yeah, look at all we're doing around here. You see all the, yeah, we put this into place. We've got this going on. You know who's doing all of that? Joseph. The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand. Why? Because the Lord was with him, and that which he did, the Lord made it to prosper. Now, I don't know what a prospering prison means, except for more people doing wrong, but the Lord made this prison to prosper. I'll tell you what they did. Anyway, I'm not going to get sidetracked. They probably built some things. It's Egypt. You know what I'm saying? Genesis 18. Genesis 18. One, two. You give me 3 more places of Scripture to turn to tonight, and we'll be done. Maybe 3. It might be 4. 3 or 4 more places of Scripture, and we'll be done. Genesis 18. The Lord is eating with Abraham. And he looks at his angels that are with him and says, I can't withhold what I'm fixing to do to Sodom. I got to tell Abraham. So he lets Abraham in on what's going to happen to Sodom. And Abraham enters into a conversation with God about the people of Sodom. You familiar with this? He begins to pray. You say he's praying. He's not praying. He's having a conversation with God. What do you think prayer is? Verse 23, Abraham drew near and said, wilt thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Peradventure there be 50 righteous within the city. Wilt thou also destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are therein? That be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked. And that the righteous should be as the wicked, that be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? I love that. He's trying to say, no, God, you can't do that, or that'd not be right. That's what that's all about. And notice the Lord's response, verse 26. The Lord said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, that I will spare all the place. Notice these 3 words, for their sakes. So do you understand that as wicked as Sodom and Gomorrah were, I mean, they were wicked, and they deserved the wrath of God, and they did. And judgment for their sin was coming. The angels are on their way. God said, I tell you what, not for their sake, but for the righteous sake, I'll spare the whole place. That's incredible. Would you agree that Sodom would have gotten in on a big-time blessing in their life for the righteous sake? There's only one problem. There's not 50 righteous. So here's Abraham's prayer. About 45. I won't, not for 45's sake. 40? I won't destroy him for 40's sake. 30? I won't destroy him for 30. 20? You see, Abraham's the first Hebrew haggling with God. He sets a pattern. You understand? 30? No. 20? No. Look at verse 32. Oh, let not the Lord be angry. I'll speak yet but this once. Peradventure 10 shall be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 10's sake. The Lord went his way as soon as he had left. What's the next word? What was it? Communing. You know what that is? As long as we were conversant with him. Do you understand? He didn't leave until Abraham stopped asking. The Lord's answer never changed. And he proves in the next chapter that he was willing to spare one righteous. Because only one person is said to be righteous in that whole place, and that is righteous Lot. That just Lot vexed his righteous soul. That's the only person who's ever claimed to be righteous. But Abraham didn't even ask for one. He stopped at 10. And the Lord stayed there the whole time until Abraham stopped communing. Because he's like, oh, that'd be good. And you know what? Listen now. It should have been good. 10 righteous. That should be good. Look around tonight. There's more than 10 people here. If we were praying for God to have mercy on our town, we're praying him down. Lord, you wouldn't destroy our town if we had 5,000 righteous, would you? What about 3,000? Maybe one? God, would you have some mercy if maybe there's 500? What about 50? Right? Come on now. As soon as we get to a number, we're like, oh, wait, we're probably good. Here's the wonder. Would it be? I wonder if there's 10 people in here tonight, 10, that God would bless for your sake. You say, no, preacher, God's blessing my life. I know he is, but are you sure it's for your sake? God's blessing Potiphar's life, but it wasn't for Potiphar's sake. Would there be 10? 5? 3? Luke 10. Luke 10. Here's my gentle admonition to our church. I wasn't here last Sunday. I wonder who spent time praying. I don't want to know. I don't need to know. But I'm curious. The Lord worked and he moved. Brother Jeff came and preached, did a great job. The Lord was using it. Brother Ed preached Thursday night. Brother Sam the Thursday before. That's a blessing that we have some men who are able to fill in and preach. That's a blessing. But I want to make this very plain, very clear. I'm not so arrogant as to think that God's blessings on our church because we're here. Do you understand? We have youth in this church. That's a blessing. You say, oh, clearly that's because we've got some families that have a lot of kids. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. You know what happened? Right here. Am I telling it right, Brother Bill? Was it right here? Was it downstairs? Was it up here? It was up here. Miss Virgie, who's not here tonight, her husband stood in this place. And his last words before he died right here was begging God to send young people to this church. God sends young people in what? You think it's our sake? When there are those who've been praying for 40 years. I'm confident of this. I'm confident of this. Our church doesn't need me. It needs Him. And as long as we are with Him, we're going to be okay. As long as He's with us, we're going to be okay. Brother Joe. Say, who is that? I know. I know there are a lot of you that don't know. Used to pray God would bring in young people. And as some of these kids were coming, there's only some of us that were here before Brother Joe passed away. Bill, he'd just beam kids. Why? Because he'd take one or two boys into that back room and teach them in Sunday school. So that's the type of faithfulness that God can bless. Look at Luke 10. After these things, the Lord appointed other 70 also and sent them 2 and 2 before His face into every city and place whither He Himself would come. Now this is the, without getting too far into this, you're familiar, but this is the kingdom ministry of the apostles. You understand, they're coming preaching that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That's what they're preaching. Hey, Jesus, the Messiah is here. And so He sends them out by 2, and therefore He said unto them, the harvest truly is great, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, that He would send forth laborers into His harvest. Go your ways. Behold, I send you forth as lambs among wolves. Carry neither purse, nor scrip, nor shoes, and salute no man by the way. And into whatsoever house ye enter, first say, peace be to this house. And if the Son of Peace be there, your peace shall rest upon it. If not, it shall turn to you again. For sake of time, we're not going to read Matthew 10. But what Matthew 10 says is if the house was worthy, then your peace would rest upon it. And what that means, according to Matthew and here in Luke, is that they would receive them. They would receive them. That's how they showed they were worthy. Okay, so here are the apostles coming into town. And they're going to find that it's not just in a house, but it's in a city as well. And they're coming in, and they've been given power and authority to heal sickness, to cast out devils, and to even raise the dead. Wouldn't you like it if an apostle came in today and said, hey, I know you're getting a little up there in age and, your bones don't work the way they used to. You want me to just go ahead and touch that and take care of it for you? Wouldn't that be a blessing? Okay, now check this out. They come into the city and they're just looking for someone that's willing to receive them. And their peace, here's what it said, would be upon the house. You ever wanted your house to be a bit more peaceful? Well, why is the house peaceful? The apostles' sake. Because, watch, if they don't, it said, if the Son of Peace be there, your peace shall rest upon it. If not, it shall turn to you again. So here's what happens. They don't receive you. They don't want you there. You come in, hey, can I stay here? No, we don't want you. Get out of here. Then your peace goes back to you. You know what? It's not on the house anymore. They miss out on a blessing. And in the same house remain eating and drinking such things as they give, for the laborer is worthy of his hire. Go not from house to house. It's going to cost you. What do you mean? Much like Elisha, there's some food involved. It's going to cost you something, but there's blessing with it. Isn't it worth it to get the peace? Verse 8, and into whatsoever city ye enter, and they receive you, eat such things as are set before you, and heal the sick that are therein, and say unto them, the kingdom of God is come nigh unto you. But into whatsoever city ye enter, and they receive you not, go your ways out into the streets of the same, and say, even the very dust of your city which cleaveth on us, we do wipe off against you. Notwithstanding, be ye sure of this, that the kingdom of God is come nigh unto you. But I say unto you, that it should be more tolerable in that day for Sodom than for that city. When you come in, if they receive you, here's what he said to them: heal the sick. Wouldn't it be great if your job is taking sick people and trying to make them well, and in comes somebody into town? Hey guys, the kingdom of heaven's at hand. And your job is immediately 100% done if all you do is say, welcome, come on in, we thank you, what a blessing. Yes, we want to hear this, we believe it. And they just start healing all the sick. What do you mean? Here's the politician. We have the lowest hospital rates in all of America. Yeah, you didn't do any of that. I love how politicians stand up and claim, doing something about lower crime rates when they've never fought crime a day in their life. But listen, as is the case, even in the secular world, there is blessing because someone else is in their life. So, who can say that about you? Whose life is blessed for your sake? All right, now let me show you the other side of this and we're done. Genesis chapter 20. Genesis 20. Here is Abraham, who in chapter 12 was told that he would receive a blessing. And listen, that in him all the nations of the earth would be blessed. By the way, aren't you blessed and faithful, Abraham? Isn't that what it says? Don't you get in on a blessing because of somebody else? You say, what do you mean? Jesus Christ? Don't you get in on a blessing because of him? Ephesians 1, aren't we blessed because of we're in Christ? Didn't he come not to be ministered unto, but to minister? If we could say it another way, he didn't come to be blessed, but to bless. Now watch this. Genesis 20, here's Abraham. The lapse here in Gerar, where he tells Sarah, now look, when we go down here, you're too pretty. They're going to kill me when they find out that you're my wife. And there's no fear of God in this place. I love it. He's the only one that doesn't fear God in the whole story. But he's like, there's no fear of God in this place. So you need to do this. Lie. Well, don't technically lie. I mean, you're a half sister. Just tell them you're my sister. Leave off the, oh yeah, and you're my wife part. Just leave that off. Tell them you're my half sister, half lie, whole half truth, whole lie. And so it'll be okay. Well, God comes to Abimelech in a dream. It's like, I'm fixing to kill you and everybody. He's like, you're going to kill a righteous nation? What'd we do? And by the way, he knew his voice. He knew who he was talking to. And he's like, I haven't done anything. And then I love this. Verse 6, and God said unto him in a dream, yeah, I know that thou didst this in the integrity of thy heart. Watch this. For I also withheld thee from sinning against me. Boy, you got to get a hold of that truth. You think you haven't done something because you're some spiritual giant. Listen, anything, kids, you can say you've not done is the grace of God in your life. If you have a testimony that I haven't drank or I haven't smoked or I haven't kissed, I haven't this or I haven't that, it's not because you're some super saint. I've grown up in church. I've heard the Christian young person who used that as a I'm better than you. It ain't I'm better than you. It's the grace of God kept me from doing those things. That's all it is. But here's what he said. I've withheld you. I kept you from doing anything. So restore the man his wife. So he does. He comes to Abraham and he's like, man, what'd you see in us that you wanted us dead? Like, why'd you do this? And then he rebukes him and he rebukes Sarah. And this is what I want you to see. Just hone in on this last part, verse 17. After all that takes place, Abraham prayed unto God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bare children, for the Lord had fast closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech. What's the next word? Because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. You see, God blessed Potiphar's house because of Joseph's sake. God blessed Laban's house because of Jacob's sake. But here, Abimelech's house is barren because of Abraham and Sarah's sake. Barren. Israel loses a battle in Joshua 7. Right after Jericho, they lose the battle of Ai. Do you know why? Joshua asks Achan, why troublest thou Israel? You know why they lost that battle and 30-something people, I think it's 38 people died? Achan's sake. I just wonder whose life is barren because of you. Oh, on one side, you have whose life is blessed. I've had bosses in my life who have said, you can't leave. I'll pay you more. I'll do whatever it takes. I don't want you to go. Why? Because when you've been here, our life is better. Our business is better. It's going. We don't want you to go anywhere. What can we do? It's like, well, I'm sorry. The Lord's moved us on. It's really not about that. But there have also been people who I know that I've hurt. We're blessed and faithful Abraham. But here's a man who Abraham, they're barren because of them. That ought to scare us. That ought to give us a stark realization that what we're doing matters. You say, well, I'm not anybody. You mean like you're not from the tribe of Levi? No, I'm not from the tribe of Levi. You mean like you're not part of a family that's well known in Israel? No, I'm not a part of a family that's well known in Israel. You realize that you sound a lot like Achan? What we would say is just a nobody. Well, I didn't think it'd be that big of a deal. It was just a little thing. No, it mattered. So I wonder, how many times has my sin kept God from blessing our church? I know it has. We've been here 12 years. I'm not naive enough to think it hasn't. There's been maybe once or twice in the 12 years where I've stood up to preach, start raving mad at my wife. You say, you shouldn't do that. I know. You preach 4 times a week for 12 years and not ever be mad at you. There's been many more times when I've had to get right with her so I could get up here. But here's why I know that that's such a big deal. Because one of the first time I ever did it, it was like the Lord said, oh, you're not going to get right with her? No, I ain't getting right with her. She needs to get right with me. Okay, go up there yourself. Wait, you're not coming with me? No, not like that. Say, what was that? When it's all me, ain't no blessing you. So I just wonder I wonder how many times we could look and say that their life is blessed because they're with us. Jacob saw it in Laban. Man, I entered in. Look, look what God's done in your life. And he had the right understanding. God was with him. But I wonder how many times, or we may not even realize it till afterward. And the Lord's like, you don't even realize, Abraham, what you've done to this whole household. This whole people are barren because of you and your wife. I don't want that to be said of Trinidad because of us. I don't want that to be said of Trinity Bible Baptist Church because of us. You know what that means? It means we're going to have to let some things that are personal go. It means we're going to have to let some pains be okay with and just say, okay, God, you see them. It hurts, but I don't want to get in the way. It means we have to put aside differences sometime and just say, you know what? The Lord will take care of it. So in Jacob and Joseph, the Lord blessed them for their sake. Here in Genesis 20, they're barren because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. And really the question is this as we close tonight. Are people bettered, blessed because you are barren? Is God pouring into their life? Or is it a wasteland? Is your job, is your workplace environment thriving and blessed and fruitful because you are there? Or is it barren because you are? Let's stand to our feet.